If I want to hang a hammock way up high in the tree canopy, how do I know what kind of hammock to buy or what kind of tree to look for? This tutorial is going to be fast, so pay attention. Setting up a hammock up high in the tree canopy can be very complicated at times. I'm rigged to this little tiny thing. I don't know. Let's give it a test. But before I teach you guys how to rig your hammock lines, you first gotta know what kind of hammock to buy and how to choose the appropriate tree to go tree camping in. In my opinion, there are 3 styles of hammocks that are appropriate for tree camping. There's the single point hammock, the modified bridge hammock, and the gathered end hammock, which is the standard kind of hammock and one that I brought with me today. The single point hammock, which is also known as the bat hammock, since there's currently only one manufacturer for it, is the easiest and safest style of hammock to use for tree camping. Unfortunately, it costs a little higher, and in my opinion, it's extremely uncomfortable. But the ease of setup makes it a very good option for a beginner, and the really thick fabric is very comforting. Because when it's rubbing against the trees or whatever you're hanging off of, it's less likely to rip and tear because it's made for rock climbing and to be scraped against granite walls all day and all night long. The modified bridge hammock is my custom solution to an unstable hammock in the tree canopy. So although I don't think there's any manufacturer selling one, it's actually pretty easy to make. And I do have a tutorial on TREEfool.com. I'll leave a link below. But the cool thing about a modified bridge hammock is that it has multiple tie-in points to the tree. So you can actually climb up over the edge, and when it's really windy, it stays rock solid in place. Unfortunately, with a modified bridge hammock, since you can tie the ends to change the shape of the hammock, depending on making it wide for really wide branches or keeping it really skinny to fit in between 2 branches, it makes it very difficult to use a tarp, cover it with a tarp, or even a mosquito net if you need these things for where you live. A good solution to fix this problem is a tarp sock. As long as you make it wide enough to fit over your hammock, it can protect you from weather and some mosquitoes, but still kind of difficult. The last option is the standard gathered end hammock. This is by far the cheapest option since you can make one for well under $50. Again, I have a tutorial on my website on how to make one that is more appropriate for tree climbing than anything that you can buy on the market. It's super easy to make. You don't even need a sewing machine. It takes less than a half hour. The gathered end hammock is also the most comfortable solution, but it is by far the hardest to hang high up in the canopy. So now that we know what type of hammock to get, we need to figure out what is the best kind of tree to hang a hammock in. Again, we have 3 options for picking out a tree for tree camping. Option number 1 is a very widespread large tree like a cottonwood, which is my personal favorite. We have a lot here in South Dakota and Minnesota. The second option is a very thin but high a tree with vertical limbs. And the third option is 2 trees. So this tree behind me is a fantastic example of a wide spreading tree because as you can see, the limbs go out horizontally from the main trunk and then they shoot up vertically. This means you can create an anchor point on the main trunk out to one of the limbs, and you have a large limb to stand on so that you can get in and out of your hammock very easily. This is one of my favorite options, but this style of tree is very difficult to find out in the wild unless you're going into a park with a lot of old growth trees. The second option is this kind of tree, which is high, but it has limbs that are all vertical. And you might at first see one and be like, hey, look at all of the options that I have to hang my hammock in between. But don't waste your time with this kind of tree because once you get up into the canopy, you will find that there are so many vertical branches that there's really no good space to hang your hammock without having another branch running up on the side of your hammock and stabbing you in the side all evening. That kind of tree is also very difficult to get in and out of your hammock because since all of the limbs are straight up and down, you really have nothing to stand on when you're initially setting up your hammock or even setting up your climbing lines. It makes for a really grueling day up in the tree canopy where you're sitting in your harness if you need a break. And the third option is to hang your hammock between two trees. Now at first this seems like, duh, might seem like the easiest, until you realize that if you're hanging your hammock way up in the tree canopy and you want to hang between two trees, that means that either one, you have to climb two trees, or two, you have to traverse between the first tree that you climbed and the second tree, both of which are very time consuming and complicated in some scenarios. Another potential negative, and I learned this one from some of the professional arborists that I've climbed with, is that when you hang between two trees up high in the canopy, you can actually create a very strong lever that in high enough winds could topple the smaller tree, since you're essentially tying two trees together in the canopy. And that would be, of course, a bad scenario. But it's usually the easiest style of hammock site to find up in the tree canopy when you're out looking in the forest, which is the reason why it's usually the style of hammock site that I choose. In the next episode, I'm gonna teach you guys how to most safely rig your hammock up in the tree canopy so that you have as little of chance of falling out of your hammock as possible. So stay tuned, guys. Goodbye and be safe.